What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Arnies. We are three exhausted Star Wars fans. I'm Matt Johnson, and did you know that General Grievous was trained in the Jedi arts by Count Dooku?
I'm Keith Baker, and news really does travel slow in the galaxy.
And I'm Austin Terry, and I'll cut right to it. This was a significant step down from Tales of the Jedi.
Whoa, not even waiting to get into his thoughts. I love it. I love it. You see, that's what Star Wars has done to us. Sometimes we get good, sometimes we get bad, sometimes we just get more of the same. We just got to cut right to the chase. Let's do that. On today's show, we're reluctantly, I think is probably the right word here, diving back into the world of Star Wars. Sometimes when we do this, it's the equivalent of diving headfirst into the shallow end of the pool. But sometimes this old, tired franchise proves why it still has legs. What will today be? We know what Austin thinks. We loved Tales of the Jedi when that came out a couple years back. 6 episodes of shorts following 2 Jedi who left the Jedi Order for various reasons, with Ahsoka Tano and Count Dooku. And now the series is back for a season 2 of sorts with Tales of the Empire, this time following 2 characters from the franchise related to the Galactic Empire in some form or fashion. We got Morgan Elsbeth from Mandalorian and Ahsoka fame, and former Jedi Barriss Offee from the Clone Wars. I know we were very high on Tales of the Jedi, like we said. Definitely kind of came out of nowhere. We were surprised. I don't even think we were going to watch it. It was just one of those projects we were like, whatever. But then you hear it's so good, you watch it, we loved it. We were excited for more. We theorized, who other characters could they follow? Would it be light side, dark side? Would they go like complete opposite direction? We didn't know. So yeah, is it kind of like history repeating itself? Like, did you guys see the trailer? Did you know this was coming before we even talked about it for this episode? Was there any hype behind it? And then I want to know what your non-spoiler thoughts are on Tales of the Empire.
For me, there was almost no hype, because unlike Tales of the Jedi, I didn't hear anything about this when it dropped. And Tales of the Jedi was that constant drumbeat of like, this is so good, there's very interesting story things going on in this show, so it almost like made you want to check it out. Whereas Tales of the Empire, I was like, oh, that's out. I love Tales of the Jedi. I'll watch it. And going into it, like I said, I do think this is a step down. I was mainly shocked about the characters they chose to focus on here. I thought Tales of the Jedi did a great job with someone like Count Dooku, who just in like the prequel movies was kind of a nothing character, and they made his motivations make sense. And then with Ahsoka, it kind of gave us like kind of that her history without needing to watch all of Clone Wars. So I thought that storytelling was very effective in Tales of the Jedi. With this one, I was just like, why are we spending time on these characters? I know one of them is very important to the Clone Wars, but not necessarily like for me as like a casual Star Wars fan. I had no knowledge of who this character was, so I wasn't latched on to the second half of the show. And then with Morgan Elsbeth, I thought she was fine in Mandalorian and Ahsoka, but never a character I was like, God, I want to learn more about her. So I was just, for me, it was like, why did Star Wars decide these were the characters we need to focus on for this project?
Yeah, I'm pretty much right aligned with you, Austin, on this. To have a full 6 episodes on Morgan Elsbeth and Barriss and how their stories line up, spanning from the fall of the Republic through the Clone Wars, through the Empire, and then going into like the First Order. That's a long time, and I'm just like, what? Where's this gonna lead to? How is this gonna feed into something that makes sense, where we all have like a good like mic drop moment? It's like, oh, this is what's gonna happen with Morgan Elsbeth. But I just didn't get that. At the end of this, I was like, okay, cool. I guess that was fun in a way, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm left right now.
And I think with Tales of the Jedi, there was almost like Lucasfilm and Disney recognized we didn't do a good job with Dooku in the prequels. We want to explore him more in the series. And then we have Ahsoka coming out, who the casual fan may not know a ton about. So there was a reason for that show to exist. Whereas with Tales of the Empire, it just kind of felt like there was no need. Because Barriss, from what I understand, is pretty important in the Clone Wars. And then Morgan Elsbeth, I feel like you get everything you need from her in The Mandalorian and Ahsoka. And there's not really a need to explain her character any further.
Yeah, it was disappointing for sure. I'm definitely with you guys there. I think, most importantly, Tales of the Jedi had a pretty clear through line. It was following 2 people that at one point in their lives, they could say that they were, followers of the Jedi. And then for one reason or another, they both decided to leave, with one of them, erring toward the more villainous side, and one, despite leaving, still maintaining that good nature. So there's just a very easy through line. Like, that was the reason they chose those 2 characters. Here, it's less interesting because they called it Tales of the Empire, which is, cool. It's like, oh, okay, that's intriguing. But then they just picked 2 villainous characters. That's really all they have in common, is that they're villainous. It's not like Tales of the Jedi, which had a bit more of an interesting kind of connection there. And then as somebody that has watched the Clone Wars, I'm very interested in Barriss as a character who, again, was also a former Jedi and Ahsoka's best friend who then betrays her and then ends up locked up. And that was always kind of one of those hanging threads whenever Clone Wars ended. They never really revisited. So I guess that's why they decided to put it here. But whereas it kind of worked last time with Ahsoka, you guys, again, like, you're talking about whatever degree of casual or, hardcore Star Wars fan you are. I think most people at least knew who Ahsoka was. This is a bit of a harder sell without Clone Wars and without that background. So I guess opposite of Austin, I was more interested in the second half just because I liked that character more than Morgan Elsbeth. But even by the time it ended and like the credits rolled in the final episode, I was like, yeah, okay. They picked 2 bad characters, quote unquote, and made them the focus. I didn't learn anything new about Morgan Elsbeth, I feel like. And then anytime like somebody like General Grievous or Thrawn would pop up, I'm like, maybe we should have made them the lead of the show.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, it was a step down. I'm kind of excited to talk about the state of Star Wars in general and what we actually might be looking forward to, as well as some like other general TV stuff. But yeah, I don't think we'll have too much to say about this one. A little bit disappointing though.
Yeah, I think if you were a casual Star Wars fan on the street and I was like, hey, they're making an animated project fleshing out like Empire figures. It's called Tales of the Empire. And then you were like, oh, is it about like Palpatine or Darth Sidious? And I was like, no, it's about Morgan Elsbeth. They'd be like, who's that? So it's just a weird, like, there's no reason for this show to exist.
But yeah, I think for the rest of this episode, we are going to get into some spoilery conversations about it. So if you haven't gotten around to it yet, if you're like Austin or Keith and like you just somehow didn't even see a trailer, which they didn't really market the show at all, so maybe you're like, oh, I do want to go watch that. Go watch that first, then come on back to listen to the rest of our conversation.
Keith, are you excited for the next Tales of the Jedi where they focus on Poe and Finn?
No, thank you.
Poe and Finn? All right, everybody, welcome to spoiler territory for Tales of the Empire, guys. Let's start with some cast, crew, and critical reception talk as usual.
All right, so Tales of the Empire is created by Dave Filoni, who is, I guess, the new resident Star Wars expert known for Clone Wars, Rebels, and Ahsoka. It's directed by Nathaniel Villanueva, Stuart Lee, and Saul Ruiz. And our story was written by Dave Filoni. Our score for the show is composed by Sean and Deanna Keener. And, of course, based on Star Wars by George Lucas.
All right, going into our cast, we got Diana Lee Inosanto as Morgan Elsbeth, Meredith Salinger as Barriss Offee, Katie Sackhoff as Bo-Katan. We're going to have to go into that one because I don't remember seeing her in the show.
She's answering some emails, Keith. God, cut her some slack.
Oh, my bad. Sorry. Warwick Davis as Ruck, Xander Berkeley as Galad Baleen, Wayne T. Chow as Wing, Nicholas Cantu as Dante, Jason Isaacs as the Grand Inquisitor, and we got Matthew Wood returning as General Grievous, and Lars Mikkelsen returning as Grand Admiral Thrawn. All right, guys, there's our cast and crew. Any positives, any negatives? What do we have?
Yeah, I'll give a quick highlight to Deanna Lee Inosanto as Morgan Elsbeth. She's fine and serviceable in the live action, and I thought she did a good job voicing the character. And I know this is an actress who has had a lot of work throughout her career, but her like really big role was later on in her career where she got the Morgan Elsbeth role. So it's cool to see her kind of like be able to carry this character forward into multiple projects.
I would say all the voice acting was great. Matthew Wood returning as General Grievous, that's awesome. That was quite the opening. That was probably one of my favorite parts of this series.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to give a call, it's not necessarily for this. It's just I liked him in the other stuff I've seen. I mean, I love Jason Isaacs in general, but I always liked his voice work as the Grand Inquisitor. Enjoyed him in Rebels. It was fun to see him come back for a little bit here. Just like a kind of like a creepy villainous voice. There's not really much else to it, but it was fun to see him back. Again, it's great to see characters like General Grievous and Thrawn pop up when they do, because it feels like they've had more intrigue and interesting stuff going on in the past. It would have been nice to see them get a bit more of a focus. I think Grievous could have easily filled like the Count Dooku role, but like whenever they announced Tales of the Jedi, and we were like, I don't give a shit about Count Dooku. He's always been a joke. Like, he sucks. But then they created kind of this interesting backstory. Maybe now that I'm saying that, I don't know if there's anything interesting to General Grievous. What was he before? I don't know. As a robot. I do want to see the scenes of him being taught the Jedi arts by Count Dooku. That's always just been funny to me on paper. So, I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, I guess Jason Isaacs is my call out.
And I do think there's something interesting to focus on General Grievous because you see all the other droids in their comic relief, and then Grievous is this like serious figure who thinks for himself and like is trying to fulfill his master's orders and his destiny as a Sith. So like there's stuff to dive into there that I'd be curious to learn how he came to be.
I mean, if he was previously something else, that would explain why he has asthma, maybe.
Chronic cough.
I was hoping we would get a cough in this show, but we didn't. There's a lot of smoke on that planet he was burning. It would have made sense for him to have an asthma attack.
Oh, maybe that's what gave it to him.
Let's dive in just to broader topics on Tales of the Empire. I do want to start here with, I do think this show kind of failed an understanding of why Morgan Elsbeth is doing what she's doing, because I think that's supposed to be the goal of the show, because I thought it was interesting how she watched her whole family and her home world like be wiped out by the Separatists, but then still allied herself with the Empire. And I never understood why she made that choice, because the Jedi are fighting the Separatists at this time, so you would think like her natural enemy would be the Separatists, and then she would align with the Jedi.
Just seemed like a power and acceptance type thing. Because, I mean, what do we know about her? Basically, from her one episode in Mando and then Ahsoka, what's Morgan's, like, main, what's the word? Like, what's her main attribute? Her main attribute is
cruel.
That she's #1 fan of Thrawn. Oh, yeah, also cruel. She's just Thrawn's #1 fan. And so this show was like, what if we explained how? So then, I don't know. I just read it as, like, she's lusting for power. She has this, like, you know, fear and passive abandonment. And then she finds this guy that is like, I did like your proposals, and I am testing you because I think you could be something. And then I think at that point forward, she's just like, wow, I found a friend. He's going to be my friend. So...
But then I wish the show would have showed us their relationship.
I know.
Because instead they used the episode after Thrawn is introduced to just leave her in the place where we find her in Mandalorian.
That episode was so strange, I thought. I was like, thank God this is only 15 minutes. I was like, what was the point of this episode, really? Yeah, so that's kind of the whole Morgan Elsbeth of it all. Just like a weirdly paced story, I felt. Like it was cool to have, like, you know, one episode of her story that's like during the Clone Wars, then one that's during the height of the Empire, and then one that's after the fall of the Empire. I like that on paper. It's just, despite having like well-placed moments in time, I didn't think what was happening in her life at those various stages was particularly interesting. But I think what is interesting, at least for me, like, again, when I say I watched the Clone Wars, I really kind of did what I think a lot of people do, and what's recommended is, like, you know, there's like a huge list of like 50 episodes that are said, like, these are the must-watches, watch those, and I watched that. And so along the way, I meet Barriss Offee, understand her story, going from best friend of Ahsoka and, like, you know, very into the Jedi to becoming a traitor to them and kind of ending up going the dark side route. But, like, how did you guys feel? I know we kind of already talked about, like, you were kind of a little bit lost without the Clone Wars, but just watching this in a vacuum, like, was there any interest of that character now that we've kind of finished, I think, talking about Elsbeth for the most part?
The interesting thing for me on paper is the idea of seeing someone indoctrinated into becoming an Inquisitor and then breaking away from that. Where I think they failed is, again, these are only 15-minute episodes. So we see her becomes an Inquisitor. It looks like she goes on her first mission and decides this isn't for me and breaks away. I almost would have rather have seen her do a lot of missions and like learn more about the Inquisitors and who they are and like all that stuff, and then see her break away. But it's so quick and short, and for me, as someone who didn't know this character, I was just kind of like, this feels like a waste of time.
Yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed too. I feel like despite knowing the character a little bit more just from watching her and other things, kind of like the Morgan Elsbeth stuff, I felt weird about the pacing here too. I guess it's kind of what you said, Austin. It's like, you know, we see her get pulled out of her life imprisonment now that, you know, Order 66 has happened. So now the Empire's in charge and they're, you know, creating Inquisitors to hunt down the Jedi. I'm like, oh, that kind of makes sense. I guess after Order 66, she would probably be utilized for those types of things. And I also like the indoctrination aspects. I thought there were some great visuals, like, you know, being forced to fight the other prisoner and then, you know, just donning the helmet after that as her old pal Annie, little Annie, walks in the room as her new boss. So, like, that was cool. But then I'm with you. Then, like, from that point on, the pacing of it is weird, especially for a show called Tales of the Empire. She's, like, already, it seems like she's reverted back to old good gal Barriss. You know, she's on her, like, first mission. Like you said, it seemed like it was her first mission. And she's pretty much done with it at that point, and then leaves, and then is now on the light side again, trying to help people. Yeah, it just felt odd. I don't know how to explain it. It was weird.
It's the weirdest arc I've ever seen, because it's prisoner, Inquisitor, Eskimo. And I've never seen somebody's arc end in an Eskimo. So, I mean, that alone was groundbreaking.
maybe that'll become a trend. I would love to ask Dave Filoni. It's just like, you made a pretty like ballsy, bold choice in Clone Wars of having the whole Barriss betrayal. And she's not like she's like a mustache twirling, like maniacal laughing person, like at the snap of a finger. She's just become disillusioned with the Jedi, ends up pinning this like attack on the Jedi Temple on her old friend Ahsoka. It's revealed it was her all along, goes to prison, and then we never saw her again. But that's the direct result of her actions is why Ahsoka left the Jedi Order. So tons of implications. It's like I said, she was never like some crazy villain. If she felt like a real character that, you know, made this choice and did something crazy wrong, has to pay the price. I just want to ask, like, Dave Filoni's like, so like, were you always sad that you didn't get to explore more of her character later in Clone Wars? Because the choice you made is, you know, with 3 shorts following her later, you know, a total of like 45 minutes if we're being generous, as like some epilogue to her story. And the epilogue ends up being, she was just a villain that's now in prison. Now she's forced to be an Inquisitor. She immediately like goes back to being good, quote unquote, and then like ends her life. She probably doesn't die at the end, but like doing what you said, Austin, she's like, "Fourth sister, no, the Empire wants us to be this way." It's just like, what was your goal here? Like, did you always want to have her be redeemed at some point and you never got to? So you chose 3 15-minute shorts as the way to do that? I don't know. I don't really know how to say it other than it just seems like a strange choice. Like, why is this the format for this story?
Yeah, especially when you zoom out and it's like, these are Dave Filoni's characters that he created and fleshed out for years on the Clone Wars, and then this is where he wants to leave them. It's wild. Like, yeah, very strange. I did want to ask you guys, we've now had 2 varying degrees of good versions of these Tales show. What do you want from these in the future, now that we've seen kind of what great looks like with Tales of the Jedi, and then what so-so looks like with Tales of the Empire?
Going back to Mando season 3, you know, that really dropped off for us. And my biggest problem with that is because they have this whole universe to work with, but they keep kind of focusing on these smaller characters and and going into these like more localized like patterns. Whereas they have all the stuff going on in the universe, they could do anything with like the Death Star, like killing planets, and they don't do anything with that. They could go back to the separatist ways, like we saw with General Grievous and the droids. Looked great. You know, we got a small scene with Darth Vader. Not that I want to see Darth Vader a lot in these side stories, but just knowing they're in the background of this is cool. I don't know. I just think they need to play around with the history of the Old Republic, New Republic, Empire a little bit better and kind of give us a broader scope, and maybe bring in some heavier characters that we know in whatever time frame that needs to be in, and then maybe build these smaller characters up. But they kind of they're just throwing these smaller characters at us, and they want us to care about these small characters without having a whole lot of reason behind them.
Yeah, that's how it feels so far. I think I would like to see this show be, I don't know, I'd like to see it be 2 things. It doesn't have to be them at the same time. I guess I would just like either take a character that people either didn't really love or we don't really know much about, and you have more to say about them, and giving it kind of, that be the reason you pick a character. Or just like have like a cool thematic reason to bring 2 characters together regardless of their history in this franchise. And you could even, that'd be the other thing, but you could also, they don't have to be established characters. Like, how cool would it be if they did like 3 episodes in this short format that like takes place like thousands and thousands of years ago in like the Old Republic days, and it's a story about like, I don't know, like the first time distrust was like sowed between like a master back then and an apprentice, and then maybe that apprentice leaves. And then the other 3 episodes are about Mace Windu kind of exploring his past and maybe why he became so distrustful. Like, how could he never trust somebody like Anakin? Kind of connecting stories for that reason. It's like, I don't know, kind of maybe showing the echoes of time over the course of this thousands of years of a franchise that we only explore the same, like, 30-year period, the Skywalker saga. So, yeah, I'd like to see more of this saga, and I'd like them to find more interesting ways to use the characters they do, whether it be something Jedi-related, Empire-related, or just concept-related. Like I said, like the example of, like, you know, distrust that forms between master and apprentice and telling stories like that or something. I don't know, but I still think there's a way to keep this moving forward.
Yeah, I think you're on the right path there, Matt, because you're leaning into like, let's pick a common theme. And they did a good job with that with Tales of the Jedi, where it's two people who left the Order for varying degrees. Tell the Empire really isn't that. So there's not a way to connect the two stories they're choosing to tell. Also, Matt, when you're talking about telling us a story of the Old Republic and distrust, first time people get corrupted, it's a great segue because you are describing the plot of The Acolyte.
Oh, you're right. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. I think maybe subconsciously I did that, but I think it's because a premise for a show like that was coming out next month, which was crazy. I've been loving the trailers. Like, it just seems like an interesting premise for me. And it's something I'm surprised we haven't dived more into in the Star Wars lexicon. But yeah, I think that's kind of the perfect transition. Like, kind of when it comes to, we didn't love this entry in the Star Wars franchise, but we have a lot on the way. Who knows when it's all going to hit, maybe later this year. It sounds like a lot of these projects are probably 2025 and beyond. But what do you guys want to talk about? Which of these upcoming things are you actually interested in?
I think I'm the most interested in The Acolyte, but Matt, I think for my friend Keith, who doesn't follow the news, do you want to explain to us what The Acolyte is?
Yeah, so I went ahead and just pulled the log line, kind of the premise for it, Keith. Let's see if this interests you. The Acolyte is set at the end of the Star Wars franchise's High Republic era, approximately 100 years before Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. It sees a respected Jedi Master investigating a series of crimes that bring him into conflict with a former Padawan learner, and this all reveals sinister forces. Kind of basically sounds like the idea of the show is, at the start of Phantom Menace, the Jedi are, there's a billion of them. They're at their peak right now. And the idea of this Sith threat feels like foreign to them. They know what it is, and they're like, we know that there's always like a master and apprentice. There's only ever two of them. But it's still like, it seems like there's rumblings, but they're also still a little bit of disbelief. It sounds like this is set not too long beforehand and maybe revealing what initiated the rise or reemergence of the Sith, I guess.
And I think the interesting plot here, too, is whenever I hear the cast and crew talk about the show, they always talk about the goal is for a show to focus on what does it look like when the evil side wins. So they want to take you on that journey of the first time Jedi were really corrupted and leaned into the dark side.
Yeah, and it would just be cool to see the Old Republic, I guess, in more of a peacetime. I guess we've only seen the Star Wars universe in war, whether it was with the Separatists or the Empire or the First Order. But no, yeah, seeing what Coruscant's like and what the Jedi Temple and how the Jedi interact in that time period would be awesome.
The other fun thing about this show, too, Keith, that might interest you is the fighting style will be much more martial arts focused than kind of like sword play. So there'll be Jedis who are kind of varying degrees of martial arts experts.
It also looks like a lot less green screen or the volumes being used. It kind of reminded me of Andor watching it. Looked like real sets, which is always a win for me. And speaking of Andor, the big mystery now, will we get it this year? Do we have to wait another year for it? I don't know. All I know is whenever it does finally come out, I am very, very excited.
Me too. I was always scared that the 2 or 3 year gap between seasons is going to make people lose their interest in the show or just forget how great it was. But I feel like the general public still talks about Andor. I always see it trending on social media of I can't wait for the show. So I'm glad that underlying fervor and fandom for Andor has continued, because when season 2 comes out, it's going to be the only thing people are talking about.
Yeah, we'll see. I think it's a testament to its writing that we're excited about, even though we know it eventually happens. We know this season coming out is, it's just a 2-season show. That's all they're doing. So I guess this will somehow lead from, I can't remember where exactly we left off. Are we still 3 to 5 years before Rogue One? I don't remember, but they said that this second and final season will cover the gap all the way up to Rogue One, where we know his fate. But I'm still excited about it. I'm still excited to see what happens with all this.
I think we're 3 years out because they're doing their arcs again. So every 3 episodes, it's an arc. And I think they've said every 3 episodes is a year.
Right. Okay. We're going to see maybe a budding relationship form between Andor and his droid friend that we haven't seen yet, K2SO. See them become bros.
Alan Tudyk, baby.
Yeah.
Get him in there.
What the fuck's going to happen with Stellan Skarsgård's character, Luthen, by the way? I feel like one of the most compelling characters we've seen enter the Star Wars franchise. I don't suspect the ending to his story will be a happy one, but I'm very curious what all he's going to be up to now that he and Andor are kind of teaming up, it seems.
Andy Serkis, too? Will he come back? Did he make it out of that prison?
Yeah.
One Way Out?
Yeah, we didn't get an ending to that either. But guys, it's fun to, gush about Star Wars and get excited about Star Wars again. We have, like we said, more Andor is always a good thing. The Acolyte seems like it could be I'm not saying Andor level, but it just seems like it has the more promise than some of the live action stuff we've been seeing the last few years. But it wouldn't be right to talk about Star Wars all positively. Let's talk about something that I'm not saying is going to be bad. Does anybody give a shit about Skeleton Crew?
I'm excited, actually. I'm excited for Skeleton Crew.
Oh, well, please take it away then. I want to know why.
The premise is exactly what Keith wants, where it's just these kids who have grown up on a planet kind of removed from the conflict. They've never left their planet, and they end up on a spaceship with Jude Law exploring the galaxy. So I like the idea of like taking a very small scale story in Star Wars of people who don't even know the galaxy is out there or anything about the Jedi or anything, and then kind of get thrust into this broader adventure. So I think it is more kids focused. They described it as the Goonies in space, but it does seem like a fun story to me.
I haven't heard too much about it.
Yeah, that's one that I feel like they're not talking about for some reason, even though I'm pretty sure it's done, but I guess we'll see. That's another one. I don't know if that hits this year. They just hold on to that for a while. Same with the Rey movie. I don't know when that comes out. I feel like that one's going to have an interesting lead up to it. It's one that I want to be good. I want to feel like really stoked about Star Wars movies again. I just think they did Rey dirty in a whole trilogy where she's the main character, and so now the idea of like a new movie or a new trilogy where she's, I guess, rebuilding the Jedi Order, I'm just not super compelled by her, and I feel bad. I always thought Daisy Ridley did a great job. It's just, I don't really care too much about the character, and that's the writing's fault.
Well, I think we need to get into a Star Wars movie that's actually started production and is the first movie in Star Wars to start production since The Rise of Skywalker, and that is The Mandalorian and Grogu, which is the Mandalorian movie. And it does have a title now. It is, Keith, your favorite. It is called The Mandalorian and Grogu.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the audience might not remember that Keith was of the opinion that the second Grogu got handed to Luke Skywalker at the end of season 2, we never should have seen that green bastard.
Yes.
And you know what? After season 3, Keith, I think your hot take turned to my take as well. We don't need him anymore.
Unfortunately, what Keith forgot about is in between all seasons of Mandalorian, Disney showed a shitload of stuffed Grogu plushes, so there's no way that green bastard's going anywhere.
I was just about to say, Austin, it's all just a marketing scheme with Grogu. All the kids love. Yeah. All the kids love that green little guy, and so they're going to keep him in whatever they can keep him in.
Are you excited to watch a 3-hour movie where he babbles and eats some more frog eggs?
Yeah, I want to hear Pedro Pascal's robotic Grogu. No, stop doing that. Leave
Are they
it
even
alone.
able to get him anymore? He seems like he's done with it. I guess you know what? The only good thing about this movie is that it seems, at least to me, it seems to imply that they've just said, okay, well, you know what? We're not going to do any more seasons of The Mandalorian, so we'll just make one big movie you can see in theaters, and we're going to call it quits there. I mean, this has to be the end for these characters, right?
Well, it's not the end for Ahsoka, because she is getting a season 2.
That's true. I forgot about that. Which I am also. I'm intrigued about that. More DH Hayden Christensen. Is that always a good thing? I don't know, but it could be.
Keith, I do have a serious question for you, though, because you are a Star Wars fanboy. You love Star Wars. Will you go see The Mandalorian and Grogu in theaters?
Oh, yeah, I'll have to. Yeah.
Yeah, he has to. I'll probably have to go with him. And Jon Favreau is directing it, right?
It is indeed directed by Mr. Jon Favreau himself.
And Mark Hamill will be on set to try and weasel his way into a Luke Skywalker cameo, which he won't, like... They're not even de-aging him. It's all just AI and CG, but then they still credit him, so I guess he'll probably be in it. I don't know, guys. I don't know anymore.
The Force is with you, Grogu.
All right, guys. Well, before we get out of here, I guess I'll just kind of leave it general, because we can do some Arnie's Podcast Awards, of course, where we take something positive, negative, or something in between from whatever we just talked about, and we give it an award. I say we'll leave it general. I'll just say you can give an award to Tales of the Empire if you want, since that was our main focus. If there's anything upcoming Star Wars related, if you want to do that, what do you think deserves an award today?
I'm going to give the person most in need of an inhaler award to General Grievous. And when you think about it, he's a robot. He doesn't have lungs. Why is he coughing? But someone get him an inhaler, because it's the only thing you hear in the prequel movies.
I'm going to give the You Sneaked Past Me award. And that goes to Katie Sagal. Wasn't that her name? Katie Sackhoff. Not Seagal. That goes to Katie Sackhoff.
Is she the sister of Jason Segel?
I think so.
Steven Seagal's niece.
Yeah. She's the sister of Jason Segel. They choose to pronounce their last names differently.
Yeah, it's gonna go to Katie Sackhoff as Bo-Katan. I still don't remember her being in Tales of the Empire. I'm gonna have to go back and look that up and watch her. What you say she was doing, Austin? She was emailing somebody?
I think she answered.
She answered a distress call. It is funny though, because she has like third billing on IMDb, so she made a decent amount of money.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. She sneaked past me. I don't remember her.
Yeah. My award is one I feel pretty passionate about. I've probably given something like this before, but I'm going to give the Secret Heart of Gold award. I'm going to give that to my friend Austin. I was under the impression until now, after all these years of friendship and, talking about Star Wars, that his heart was dead and cold and black like mine. And whenever I said, who gives a shit about Skeleton Crew, I saw his eyes light up a little bit. He's like, no, this is the project. I am excited about it. This is the one about, the kids. It's like going on a little like Amblin Goonies style adventure. So there's definitely some warmth in that fireplace, so to speak. So he and Keith are going to have a good time with that one. I guess I might watch it.
Yeah, there's definitely something stoking my fire pit, but it's Jude Law. It's not Star Wars.
That's fair. All right, well, with that, everybody, thank you all so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you hit that follow button so you never miss our upcoming content. Also, please share us with your friends if you enjoyed this episode. We really appreciate that to continue to grow our show. Please leave us reviews as well. Even if you don't want to write anything, leaving us a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever your pod really does help us out. At the Arnies is our social, and the Arnies.media is the website. We'll be back next Tuesday with another episode.
And lastly, we want to hear from you, so please send us a message on Instagram at the Arnies or email us thearniesmedia@gmail.com. What did you think of Tales of the Empire? Which upcoming Star Wars stuff are you excited about? Should Jon Favreau quit? Anything you say we'll read on the show and react to it live on our latest episode.
All right, well, now I feel like sad and depressed to end this off. John, why did you have to do this to me? But I'll survive. I'll make it through, and we'll see that damn movie and talk about it somehow. Until then, everybody, see ya.
See ya.
Jon Favreau shouldn't just quit Star Wars. He should quit cinema.
Oh.